Welcome to our Mantra Breathe today. It's so great to have you with us. We're happy to have you with us. And today the theme is going to be more on healing and the relationship of guilt to sickness, and pain. So this is something that we discovered when we gave our attention to this supplement of the Course in Miracles called Psychotherapy, Purpose, Process, and Practice. And there were just a couple of passages I wanted to bring to our attention about sickness, okay? Because some of us have been going through lately some physical issues, some pain in our bodies, and so we've been giving more attention to that. So this is from the middle section of this psychotherapy, purpose, and process. And this is called the process of illness. And then in this, Jesus says, once God's Son is seen as guilty, illness becomes inevitable. It's been asked for and it will be received. And all who look for illness have now condemned themselves to seek for remedies that cannot help, because their faith in the illness is in the illness and not in salvation. There can be nothing that a change of mind cannot affect, for all external things are only shadows of a decision made already. Change the decision, and how can its shadow be unchanged? Illness can be but guilt's shadow, grotesque and ugly, since it mimics deformity. If deformity is seen as real, what could its shadow be except deformed? So that is definitely saying all sickness has guilt attached to it, right? So when we're feeling some pain, suffering, condition in our body, we also say all pain is the effort in clinging to negative thoughts. So we have to get it. What are some of those negative thoughts that are making us sick, or also you could say making us feel guilty in some way? So guilt is often very suppressed. It's like a thing, it's kind of like an ugly demon we don't want to look at. But if we want it dissolved, we have to bring it to the light. It's like you have to bring your errors to the altar of truth to correct. It's not the other way around. So you have to be willing to kind of look at any guilt you might be holding, especially if you're experiencing some pain in your body. You can just say, well, the thoughts that I have that are contributing to this pain in my body are, and see what you get, and see if there's any relationship with guilt. And then the healing, it says, is a process of forgiveness. So that I think we have to understand as well. And then the healing would be some form of clearing of the mind. And in this particular essay, it's called psychotherapy, but it's not in the general definition of what we think of as psychotherapy. It's a process that we all go through, and even the therapist, so-called therapist, goes through when they're seeing a so-called patient or client. So the process is for both the therapist and the patient, or both the practitioner and the client. So the process of psychotherapy then can be defined simply as forgiveness. For no healing can be anything else. The unforgiving are sick, believing they are unforgiven. All healing is some form of forgiveness. And if we're not doing that, then we're hanging on to the guilt, and then essentially it's a lot harder to heal the condition that we're experiencing in our body. So this is what Sandra wants to talk about today, and I think we all need to give some attention to this, the relationship of guilt to sickness, and then also the true remedy for that is forgiveness. And we have to be willing to let go, see our part, and let go of any guilt we're holding about ourselves, or we're projecting it out on other people in the form of a grievance.
Well, I personally didn't think I had guilt all my life. I didn't feel guilty, but about 6 months ago, I got down to the deepest guilt that I had suppressed, which is the original guilt. In a way, it's a religious thing. It's like thinking you're a sinner because you took a body and you separated from God. I call that the original guilt. I didn't even know I had that. It all came up, and I was processing that for quite a few months. So most people have that and they don't even realize it. So most people have like suppressed guilt. Okay, I'm going to read from chapter 7 of my new book, Revolutionary Spiritual Healing. And I want you to breathe while I'm reading this. And it's about 4 or 5 pages here. Okay, everybody take a few breaths. Lie down if you would while I'm reading this so you can process it better. Guilt and Sickness, chapter 7. Guilt demands punishment. That's the main thing you need to know. Whenever you have guilt, you're going to attract some form of punishment to yourself, and the common thing is sickness and pain. In your ego's mind, you believe this is so. One of the ways we punish ourselves when we feel guilty is to get sick. We attack our bodies with an illness, a pain, or an injury that we make up. So you could punish yourself in many different ways, but those are the common ones. A Course in Miracles says that guilt is not only not of God, it's an attack on God. So when you're guilty, you're attacking yourself in God. It says it is a sure sign that your thinking is unnatural. This is all explained in the section called The Ego's Use of Guilt in the Course. The Course also says that if you have guilty, you are walking the carpet of death. Now that is a heavy statement. So most people end up killing themselves because they never process their guilt, and death is the ultimate punishment. The Course says that if you have guilt, you are walking the carpet of death. That's pretty heavy. That means we think we must eventually die as a form of punishment for our guilt, especially if we think we're sinners. The belief in sin is a request for death, by the way. Now, you may not have been religious in this life, but you could have been a Catholic in many lifetimes. You have to go back about 5 lifetimes to clear religion. So probably you were told in one of those 5 lifetimes you were a sinner. The belief in sin is a request for death. We therefore kill ourselves with our own thoughts by squeezing out the life force. This is what people do, is they squeeze out the life force, and the body dies when it can no longer clear itself. See, most people are not doing what you're doing, which is clearing your subconscious by breathing, and they're suppressing everything, and finally they've suppressed so much that they're just squeezing out the life force, and the body can no longer clear itself. This is why you want to keep doing liberation breathing all your life, to keep clearing yourself. Sometimes you may not even realize you're guilty until you get a symptom. In this way, the symptoms serve you to make you aware of the guilt. With innocence, you can ward off any disease. By the way, your innocence will heal you. A few years back, I developed a lot of tension because of having to fire someone. It was the dreaded part of my job as a leader. I realized the tension was due to guilt, but I couldn't seem to shake it. So I discussed it with a spiritual teacher that I had in Spain. He said, Your problem as a leader is you don't let people fall on their face. He made it clear to me that some people set it up that the way to finally learn their lesson. In effect, they fire themselves. So I appreciated this teaching, so I did it. And he helped me see that I was innocent for what I had to do. So reading A Course in Miracles helps you become regrounded in your innocence. It says you can have forgiveness in the holy instant because God does not make your sins real. So God is instantly forgiving you. The problem is we don't forgive ourselves. The holy instant is one's choice to accept the energy of love over fear and unity over separation. God knows that your case or your issues are just your ego, which is not real, because the ego is a result of this belief in separation. And of course, to God, there is no separation. That's why God does not make your ego or your case or your sins real. This could seem like an advanced concept if you have not read much of the Course in Miracles. Another way to say this is this: your ego is a nightmare that you are temporarily experiencing. You think you are separate, which is the ego, but that is not real because there is no separation. I think somewhere in the Course there's a lesson that says the only thing you need to correct is your imagined separation from God. You can't be separate from God. When your child has a nightmare, for example, you don't make it real, nor does God make your nightmares real. It's important to keep studying the Course until you finally understand this. Now, another thing, along with the idea of guilt, you have to be aware of the danger of carrying deep, dark secrets. This is like having inside of you a festering sore full of guilt, which you pretend you do not have, and you pretend it doesn't affect your body. But this keeps eating away at you, no doubt about it. You must be willing to tell someone if you have some deep secret about which you feel guilty. That was one of the whole ideas of going to a priest. However, confession in the church has in many cases been used to make one feel even more guilty. Doesn't necessarily work, but it's good to share a deep, dark secret with someone so you can get it off your chest. An acquaintance of mine was killed in a small plane crash. I had a lot of trouble understanding why he had crashed because he was quite enlightened. I wanted to know what went wrong with his mind to attract that fate. So I begged one of my teachers in India to tell me. He was reluctant, but after he saw the insomnia I suffered because of this death, he finally told me that this man had a deep, dark secret. I was later surprised to learn he was a very secretive person. So in the end, the guilt he had held and concealed him did him in. So I started telling all my students to confess their deep, dark secrets. One girl finally told me her father was in the mafia. Her whole life changed after she confessed that. She became younger and more powerful in her own right. Once I did something I thought was really stupid and I could not let go of it. One friend knew about it, but it was not enough for me to just tell him. He realized I needed kind of a ceremony, so he put me in his car and he drove me out in the woods to meet a recluse, a friend of his. He told me to go into this shack and confess this thing to his friend, the recluse. Well, I did it. I have no idea who that person was or is to this day, but he was very loving. Of course, he didn't have any judgment of me. He did not care who I was either. He heard what I said and loved me and did not bat an eye. He thought it was trivial. I always got over the whole ordeal by confessing it. So if you have illness, make sure you haven't got a deep, dark secret that you're harboring. Years later, I found myself with a silly habit that I was embarrassed about. I was a public figure by then, and I didn't want to tell anyone. So then I remembered the friend who had driven me to see the recluse, so I went to see him again. He was hanging out in his kitchen, another friend from San Diego. Now, this guy was the opposite of recluse. He was gregarious and wealthy and all that, and he was cool. I decided this was the right moment, and I blurted out my embarrassing habit. They both looked at me and said, "So what?" The next day, I got over that condition. So find someone to talk to, even if it's a stranger. Try it. We all have some past life guilt. We have past life guilt. We have birth trauma guilt for hurting our mothers. We have religious guilt, and we have guilt for things we've done. So that's 4 different guilts that most people have. And the separation, of course, was our original guilt. Well, guilt makes the body suffer. Love and guilt cannot coexist. So when you're into guilt, you're not being loving. Peace and guilt cannot coexist. But to the ego, there's no escape from guilt. The ego is going to tell you that you can never get over your guilt. In fact, there's a part of the Course in Miracles text that's very powerful. It says, the ego is going to tell you, if you dare think you're innocent, then you're really guilty. The ego is going to tell you you're guilty for thinking you're innocent. That's how tricky it is. Those who hold grievances will suffer guilt. That's why Marcus was talking about forgiveness. If we yield to guilt, we're deciding against health and against happiness. So to heal ourselves, we must know and accept that we are innocent. So when we're guilty, we feel bad, and then we get addicted to feeling bad. So guilt can manifest as psychosomatic diseases, accident proneness, and suicidal behavior. One must decide to either cling to the guilt and get the juice from it or give it up. No healing can occur until the right decision is made. The way to escape pain is guiltlessness. Our holiness is our salvation, and it's the end of guilt. The guiltless mind does not suffer. So recovery from guilt may include confession, as I said, forgiveness, as he said, penance, renewal of spiritual principles, doing good works, selfless service, and humanitarian efforts. I know one guy had this really bad disease I read about, and it was like incurable. And he realized, that he had created this. And what he did is he went to a hospital and volunteered to take care of children and other people who had that condition. And he totally healed himself by doing humanitarian efforts and good works. So we're talking about guilt as an addiction. Addictions are not so easy. All your problems of pain and sickness originate with guilt. Then, our problem is we think it's wrong to give up guilt. So then you have to handle that. So people create their own hell because of their guilt. And the Course says hell is what the ego makes of the present. Hell is not some place you go to after you die. You can be in hell right now. Hell is what the ego makes of the present. So if people are really stuck in their ego, then their life turns to hell. Lesson 13, it is guilt that has driven you insane. Lesson 14, guilt is always disruptive. Anything that engenders fear is divisive. The ego is the symbol of guilt. Lesson 15, guilt must lead to the belief in hell and always does. Lesson 16, the appeal of hell lies in the terrible attraction of guilt. Lesson 18, you have displaced your guilt to your body. Lesson 19, while guilt remains attractive, the mind will suffer. These are all quotes from the Course. The attraction of guilt produces fear of love. When the attraction of guilt holds sway, peace is not wanted. From the ego comes sin, guilt, and death. No one can die unless he chooses death. That's right from the Course. That means we choose our own death. What seems to be fear of death is really its attraction. People are actually attracted to death because they think their life is going to get better and they're going to go to heaven. It doesn't work like that. When you drop your body, your mind, the mind seeks its own level. Then you have to reincarnate and go through it all again. Sickness is the witness to guilt and death. Sickness is but a little death. These are all quotes from the Course. Guilt is the sole cause of pain in any form. As long as you feel guilty, you're listening to the voice of the ego. Love and guilt cannot coexist. To accept one is to deny the other. The appeal of hell lies only in the terrible attraction of guilt. To the extent in which you value guilt, to that extent will you perceive a world in which attack is justified. All guilt is solely an invention of your own mind. The undoing of guilt is an essential part of the Holy Spirit's teaching. Forgiveness takes all guilt away. The Holy Spirit seeks to remove all guilt from your mind that you may remember your Father. Only in your guiltlessness can you be happy. The burden of guilt is heavy, but God would not have you bound by it. You've been told to bring all your guilt to holiness. Never attempt to overlook your guilt before you ask the Holy Spirit's help. Your part is to offer him a little willingness. So you ask the Holy Spirit for help to take your guilt. The Holy Spirit, the escape from guilt was given to the Holy Spirit as his purpose. Forgiveness will remove all sense of weakness, strain, fatigue from your mind. It will take away all fear, pain, and guilt. Atonement does not heal the sick, but takes away the guilt that makes sickness possible. Forgiveness is the means by which the fear of death is overcome because it holds no fierce attraction now that guilt is gone. The Holy Spirit's guidance is to let yourself be absolved of guilt. Okay, that's it for today. I want you to breathe, and I just want to say again, if you didn't hear me say this last time, I've been trying a new thing. For 10 straight days, I did mantra breathing at 3 o'clock in the every afternoon when we were in Florida. And then I would lie there, and after about a half hour, I'd start talking out loud to Babaji. And I'd say, I decree and declare that I have this or that, and or that I'm over this or that or whatever. And I'd say it out loud. So you might want to try that. For me, it really helped me to do that. I felt like I was really being heard when I was saying it out loud. And I could say it out loud while the mantras were playing without embarrassment. So I'm recommending you try it today. If something comes to you, you want to speak to Babaji or Jesus or the Holy Spirit about, just say it out loud and see how you feel doing that.
They're muted, so they won't. Other people won't.
Other people won't hear you because you're muted. But I'm just suggesting you try it. And, for me, I like to say prayers out loud. I've been doing a lot of prayers out loud lately, and I feel better and better.
Yeah, I just want to say to complete this thing about guilt, your innocence is guaranteed by God, no matter what you've done or what you think other people have done. So we have to see that is the real essence of us. No matter what mistakes we've made in the past, they can be corrected. And even though we made a mistake, we're still innocent, whatever that was. Knowingly or unknowingly, we did whatever, or other people did, and we're absolved of that instantly. So the essence of you is pure innocence. The Course would call it sinlessness. And that's the healing energy. When we put ourselves in that sinless perfection of our God-created state, that's the healing energy, and that's going to release the guilt, forgive ourselves, forgive everybody, forgive everything. And that's the healing that we're all after here. And that's the joy that we enter into mantra breathing.